Hi everyone, I want to welcome you to this week's episode of the Lesson in 5. Lesson in 5 is a weekly program where we summarize the Sabbath School lesson into 5 main points. If you're new around here, remember to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our future videos. The Sabbath School lesson for this week is Desire of Nations. One of the lessons that you quickly learn in this journey of faith is that the only hope for the Christian, the only hope for the human to get salvation is through Jesus. Only the righteousness of Christ will suffice. This week, we're going to be learning about the beauty and excellence of the gift that we find in Jesus Christ. The effects of sin. Sin has a power to separate us from God. Sin pulls us away, makes our disposition turned away from God. If you don't believe me, look at Adam and Eve in the garden. When they sinned, they were hiding from the God that loved them and created them. Sin separates us from God. Who is forgiven? On the judgment, the question that will be asked is not who sinned, because the Bible makes it clear. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Rather, the critical question that's going to be asked is who has received the forgiveness of Christ. You see, when Jesus was dying on the cross, he extended his forgiveness to all. But it's up to you and me to receive that forgiveness. The evidence that we are in right relationship with Christ is the works that we do. Works come as an outgrowth of our relationship with Christ. Only when we know who Jesus is, when we love him dearly and have a thriving relationship with him, are we able to model or demonstrate the character of Christ in the world we live in. Universal appeal. Book of Isaiah speaks about salvation, the light of God going out to all the nations. Right from the time of Abraham, this was God's desire. He wanted to reach all nations of the earth through the people of Israel. It's exactly what he said to Abraham, that through you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. That means the mission that God has for his people is a global mission. God wants to reach everyone, everywhere. The year of the Lord's favor. Isaiah speaks about a great day, a day that would proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, liberty to the oppressed, healing of the brokenhearted. Much of the language that we find here mirrors Isaiah 25, which speaks about the year of Jubilee, but it goes beyond what the year of Jubilee represents. And this year, or this day, reminds us of the time that Jesus comes. See, when Jesus comes, he actually quotes from Isaiah and sees his ministry as being exactly that, binding up the brokenhearted, setting at liberty those who are oppressed. Our work needs to also take after the work of Christ. We need to look for Jesus in the person of the vulnerable, in the person of the brokenhearted, and in the person of the downtrodden. The day of vengeance. Isaiah 61 verse 2 speaks about the day of vengeance. Interesting that when Jesus quotes this passage in Luke, he doesn't go through the whole passage, but he stops right before speaking about the day of vengeance. This was no coincidence. Why? Because when Jesus came the first time, he was coming to die for the sin of the world. He wasn't coming to usher out judgment. Judgment was going to happen at a later date, or is going to happen at a later date. So Jesus, in his ministry, was fulfilling the first part of Isaiah 61, and later the fulfillment of verse 2 is going to come. That great and exciting terrible day of the Lord. Sometimes we are uncomfortable with the issue of judgment, but it will help us to feel better about judgment if we know that judgment is in favor of God's people. If we know that judgment is coming to right all the wrongs, injustices, suffering, and pain that we witness in this world. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Lesson in 5. If you've enjoyed this video, try and think about somebody else who might enjoy this video and share it with that person. Until next week, God bless you all.